And welcome on in to the latest edition of the Blue Horseshoe podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey. George, it's game week. But we say that, or at least I say that, with a little bit of trepidation and a little bit of nerves because it's not a normal game week. It is Jacksonville week. And for 8 straight years, George, this has been the Colts hell on earth. It is where dreams have gone to die, where playoff hopes and dreams have gone to die, and otherwise just mediocrity is settled in here. Boy, it's going to be. Let me ask you this. Compared to previous years, 8 losses in a row since 2014, last time the Colts won in Jacksonville. Does this week feel any similar to the week they were in Jacksonville back in 2014?
No, because Jacksonville is a better football team. I think that's what's really changed here. A lot of the streak was I don't want to call it fluky because you win 8 straight games. Obviously, it's not a fluke, but there have been some pretty bad Jacksonville teams during this stretch that have won football games. And really, 2017 was a good team, obviously. That's the only one that really comes to mind.
2022 at least went to the playoffs last year.
Yeah, but that was so early. They were still kind of struggling.
You're right.
And the one that stands out is obviously 2020, where they win week 1 and they lose the last 15. So it's different because Jacksonville, and I do wonder how that comes into it. This is the first time since 2017 that the Colts are playing the Jaguars, and the Jaguars have something tangible and obvious to play for as well. I think some of maybe the rest of this has been not a Super Bowl week for them, but it's something that they had to play for. You had this streak of beating the Colts, so no matter how the year's going on, you can keep that going, and that Sunday you can feel good about yourself. That's not a factor this year. Yeah, I don't think that plays into it. But this, look, I know there's something in the water down there. You just hope that maybe Gardner Minshew has shared whatever the secret is, and the Colts now know why they can't beat the Jaguars in Jacksonville.
And hopefully, he picks up where he left off the last time he was in Jacksonville when the Colts were on the field with him, where he threw for 3 touchdowns. And like I said, in 2020, only one of the season, that's still unbelievable, was that game where he quarterbacked again and played well enough to lead them to an upset victory there in week number 1. I'm glad you said water, George. Something down in the water. Something is off when the Colts go to Jacksonville that has possessed them for the last basically decade. So here I told you on the last pod, I'm going to try to do something on this pod to change the luck around, change the juju around. And I thought to myself, what could I do that's tangible and also relevant to this game? So I thought maybe should I do like a rain dance or something like that to that effect? No. Here's what we're going to do, George. So it's not just, unfortunately, the Colts that have had right now horrors in Jacksonville. My Penton in the lines. The last time they were in Jacksonville, I think it was a Tax Slayer Bowl still, that was called, back in 2015. Played and got smoked by Georgia. So bad memories for Penn State, bad memories for the Colts. So here's what we're going to do. I have this bag of ice. It's already half melted to kind of get a little bit head start. In this bag of ice, there was 8 ice cubes representing each of the 8 losses the Colts have suffered in Jacksonville since 2014. Here's what we're going to do, George. Over the course of this pod that we record, including when Marcel Robinson, who will join us again here to go behind enemy lines for Jacksonville in a little bit, we are going to hopefully, I hope this time's out right. I've never done this before. We are going to have hopefully the ice melt, and I will chug the water at the end of the show here. So hopefully, I guess for lack of a better term, drink away all of the bad omens, bad juju, bad feelings that have been had in Jacksonville since 2014, and hopefully I will turn the luck around. I don't know. That's what I got, George. I at this point will try anything. I'm desperate.
At this point, I think it's worth anything, right? They've gone on different continents. They went over to England. You can't break the streak. It doesn't matter. So why not? Anything is worth trying at this point.
Anything is worth trying. I think we had Marcel when he came on the pod last year. I think he was like in the Colts locker room, I believe it was. So he was like even in there, maybe trying to like, have some of his like good juju, being associated covering the Jaguars rub off in the Colts locker room. That did no good. So we've been trying, at least on our 2 years on the pod here, to change the luck. So now we're going to see if this new can happen, if this new idea can work, George. Hopefully we can get a solution here going forward. But between at least now and then, right? Also, too, maybe just it takes some better play on the field outside just drinking some ice.
That's crazy talk. That's insanity there. I mean, you got to talk about the real stuff here. Superstitions, ice. That's what matters. Play on the field. What are you talking about?
You're right. As Michael Scott would say, I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. So
Let's
let's just say the ice helps a little bit. Also, maybe a little bit on the field. A little bit on the field can help. Like 95% ice, 5% on the field.
That's about the right ratio.
Yeah, the small on the field part then, George. I think, tell me if I'm wrong here. I feel like this game's going to come down to the run game. If the Colts can run the ball, I feel good. Not great. Not a lock to win. I feel good about their chances to win. If they put up anything near what we saw in week 1, blowout city.
Cool. I mean, hopefully they never put up anything near what we saw in week 1 again, just for everybody's sake. That's going to go down as one of the all-time worst rushing days in the history of the league. So, I think if you're the Colts, I look, it's similar to the Titans situation. We were talking about last year. They lost 5 straight to the Titans, and they lost 2, 4 straight at home, and the same common denominator there: losing up front, losing in the trenches. Last week they won. They were the bully. They won in the trenches. No better example of that than the Zaire Franklin and DeForest Buckner stop on 4th and 1. But it's the same thing again. You've got to win in the trenches, and that means running the ball. And I think that's going to be, however long AR is out. We'll get into that later in the podcast. I think that's the formula now. It's going back to that 2021 style. Lean on Jonathan Taylor. Now he's got Zach Moss with him. And Gardner Minshew make the throws when he has to. Keep the defense honest. Make the plays when he has to, like that 3rd down throw when he gets just drilled and he finds Alec Pierce because he read the play ahead of time. He knew where to go with the football. That's what you need from him. But I think if they don't have at least 130 rushing yards, I don't think they win on Sunday.
I like that number too, because I was going back, George, to see if there was any sort of trend, especially on the ground game, that could contribute to why they lost 8 straight. I can't even say, I guess, in Jacksonville against the Jaguars on the road, because like I said, the one London game technically wasn't in Jacksonville, but still the streak applies. They averaged in those 8 straight losses in Jacksonville, they've averaged 92 yards on the ground per game as a team. So you're talking about, again, like that's not exactly, I mean, I thought it was honestly going to be a little bit worse, to be completely honest with you. So it's a little bit higher than I thought. Still not great, especially for a team that for a large part of that stretch was reliant on the run game. Because even though, again, Andrew Luck was there for a little bit of that streak, it's still, he was hurt. He's missed some games. So again, you have backup quarterbacks in there playing. You have different, Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz. Like, they've had to rely on the run game since 2014 a lot when facing the Jaguars, and they've not been able to have really any sort of consistent success. I like that number 130, George, because I think you're right. If you're going to win this game, you can't just break 100. You got to be, well over, and you got to be establishing a legitimate ground game like they did last week.
Yeah, and limit possessions, right? I think that's going to be one of the big keys here. Don't let the Jaguars get this into a shootout because it's not a situation you want to be in, especially with the young corners. You got to try to protect them as best as you can, the 2 rookie corners. But I think what I think is interesting, we'll talk to Marcel about this here in a little bit. It's a rematch in name only. When you go back and you look at the Colts from week 1, they got a different quarterback. They've got a different run game. They've got different corners starting. And the same for Jacksonville. They've got a much healthier offensive line than they had back then. I don't think it is a rematch, and you would think it's crazy as close as they are together. These are 2 pretty different football teams from the ones that met in the season opener.
Through your point, and obviously right, Anthony Richardson being the big one that's out for the Colts, but you're also right. No Zach Moss in week number 1, and no Jonathan Taylor either. So that's a huge boost for this team, where I think it goes off the top of my head, it was like 1.5 yards per carry they average as a team. Deion Jackson fumbled the ball away, could not get any sort of established ground game going. So it's close enough where everyone remembers that just debacle on the ground. That's huge for the Colts. And it's also huge too, because you see, like last week, right? We talked about how the Titans were the best team in terms of yards per rush allowed defense in the NFL going into last week's matchup. We saw the Colts, and especially Zach Moss, run all over them. The Colts have been, since week 1, since Zach Moss has returned to the lineup, the Colts have been one of the best ground attacking teams in the NFL. They're averaging since week 1 147 yards per game, fourth best in the league. Again, you're going against a stout run defense right now in Jacksonville that's allowed just 100-yard rusher on the season, Bijan Robinson. Otherwise, again, it's kind of similar in the sense that you're going against statistically one of the better run stuffing teams in the league. And if you're the Colts, again, you should believe, based on what we saw last week, of your offensive line, which looks to be healthy. We talked about the Jags O-line. Colts O-line looks to be back intact going down in Jacksonville this week. And now you get your two backs, your two premier 1-2 punches, with John and Taylor definitely getting more now than, was it 10 total touches, 7 total touches?
10 snaps, 7 touches.
10 snap, thank you. 10 snaps, 7 touches. He's going to get more of that on Sunday. So you feel pretty good about right now, based on what we saw last week and now projecting to this week. If you're the Colts fan, you should feel like that 130 number is well within range on the ground.
I think it better be. I mean, if you're doing 3 and out here and you're not getting the job done on the ground, I think it can become a really long day really quickly.
I'm with you. Yeah. 24-0. We thought that was bad last year, and that kind of seemed like a big blowout. It could be a lot worse, especially now with this Jaguars offense starting to click, kind of how we saw against Buffalo. I mean, that's a good defense the Bills have last week in London. And the Jags, I mean, if it wasn't for a few self-inflicted wounds where they turned the ball over deep in Buffalo territory a few times, I mean, we're talking about maybe a 40 spot they put on the Bills with how much they're moving the ball up and down the field. So, yeah, the Colts defense has been really good so far this year. Obviously, the big question is going to be the secondary for them. But like you said, if Gardner Minshew, and especially the ground game, can't get going early, and like you said, it's 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, we may be able to start the post-game pod at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, they need to establish that physical mentality. And I think, somebody asked me a week or two ago, what's the identity of this team? And I said, I don't think they figured it out yet, because, they've had so many starts and stops, and you got a first-year head coach, and you got a first-year quarterback. But I think the identity of this team needs to be for the next month, maybe 2 months, however long this period is, that physical bully mentality that you saw from them in 2019, 2020, 2021. I think they got to get back to that. And I think the offensive line's in a spot where they're prepared to get back to that. I think the offensive line very much this week is saying, put it on our shoulders. Yes, let us lead the way.
RTDB. Run the damn ball, George. I guess I got RTDBG. Get the George in there as well. But PFF this week also released their rankings so far of the top offense lines in the NFL. Colts come in at number 4. So again, we've talked about the change right now. You see it tangibly, how this Colts offense line is starting to move people again. But here's a big test, because even when this Colts offensive line has been at their best and been at their mightiest, the Jags have always found a way to give them fits. And it's always, George, been up front in the trenches. Again, even 2019, 2020, when they've been the best, they've always struggled kind of getting a push at the line of scrimmage.
Absolutely. That's the common denominator here.
So we'll see, again, who has the edge as we go into week 6 in Jacksonville. Is it the Colts O-line or the Jaguars D-line? We'll talk about that and a lot more with our next guest, Marcel Robinson, who will join us on the Blue Horseshoe Pod returns. What's up, Marcel?
What's up, fellas? Sorry, I got in here a little later. Had to, Zoom always needs to update when you're running late.
Right, exactly.
No, you're good, man.
Like it knows. My mic never wants to work when I'm running late. Ryan knows this.
Always. Got to be something, right?
Oh, you're in a rush? Oh, here's a little technical difficulty. Here's a little glitch in the system. Here's a quick reboot.
That's right.
Never fails. Never fails. Well, thank you for hopping on with us. We do always appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. My pleasure indeed.
Were you in London last week?
I was not. I actually choose not to go. I went about 6 years ago. We went in 2017, but I usually hang back here in Jacksonville because it's typically on the same weekend as the Georgia-Florida game. And obviously, me being a Georgia fan, that's the most important game of the year, like ever. So I choose to stay here to go to that. I was down on the same weekend this time, but with them going 2 weeks, it just made more sense logistically. Me with my daughter and I run a bunch of freelance businesses here, do a bunch of freelance business here, so there's a lot more money to be made here in the States.
Smart.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, almost 2 weeks in London. It's a long time.
It is a long time.
Be across the pond. Okay. If you're ready, Marcel, if you're ready, we can get this rolling here.
Yep, I'm good.
All righty, let's do it. Coming down in 3, 2, and 1. And welcome back into the Blue Horseshoe podcast. As always, joining us behind enemy lines, anytime we talk about the Jags or facing the Jags, we do welcome on from Action Sports Jacks, Marcel Robinson. Marcel, welcome back, man. How are you?
Oh, back like we never left, man. I'm feeling good. I know it seems like we're both feeling a little good right now, but definitely a good time and looking forward to the game this weekend.
Well, Jacksonville obviously this week has a lot of reasons to feel good with how they've dominated the Colts at home. I'm curious. I know it's still kind of early in the week, Marcel, but I'm curious the vibe of this team. They've done something we've never seen before in the NFL. It's been 2 straight weeks in London. Now, you could argue that's good because you're on this, your body clock is used to it. You could also say it's a long time now to get back adjusted coming back from London over here. Again, still early in the week, but is there any sort of sense of lag or fatigue at all from the team from that 2-week London trip?
I haven't sensed that to be the case. Obviously, it's one of those things where it just kind of has to happen. But I feel like the Jags have had a pretty good plan in place in terms of going over. So I would imagine that the plan is just as intricate coming back, getting the guys back in town and getting acclimated and everything. As someone who's made the trip in the past and actually made a non-related overseas Euro trip earlier this year, it probably does take a few days to kind of get back into the swing of things. But these guys are professionals. I mean, getting back, it's good. The good thing about them is that they're getting back to a state-of-the-art facility. They've got a bunch of people over there that know exactly what they're doing to get their bodies right. And I'm sure their practices and everything will be adjusted as such to make that transition a little smoother.
When they finally do get to Sunday, they're going to see a familiar face over on the other sideline, obviously, in Gardner Minshew. We know his rookie year, how popular things were there in Jacksonville. What is the overall feeling from Jags fans about the Colts' new starting quarterback?
I mean, no bad vibes. I mean, obviously, everyone loves and appreciated everything that Gardner did for the city, for this team. A bunch of great moments. The worst thing that happened to Gardner Minshew here in Jacksonville was that Trevor Lawrence was available. And I think you ask 32 NFL GMs and head coaches, what would they do if they had Gardner Minshew at the helm and Trevor Lawrence was in your hand? I mean, 32 out of 32 would take Trevor. But I sense it'll be a very warm, welcome. Obviously everyone's coming out there with their shirts. Some of the talk of the town is some people wearing their Gardner Minshew Jaguars attire, which I'm not sure how that necessarily works in terms of fandom, but I think it'll be good, man. It'll be good to see him. Everyone here, still likes him, still loves him. One of the quarterback trainers that he has still lives here, so talks to him all the time because they're obviously still working. So I think it'll be a warm reception, and obviously the Jag fans will, once that clock starts winding down, it'll change a little bit, but everyone's gonna be happy to see, the stash back in the Ville.
No disrespect to Gardner here, Marcel. There's Gardner Minshew apparel?
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, we walk around now, and if you haven't gotten a Trevor Lawrence jersey, you're more than likely wearing a Gardner Minshew jersey. I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard of Minshew Mania was
Minshew Mania
here in Jacksonville. I remember when Minshew Mania started up in Denver, over in Denver. I was at that game when he kind of made the move, shook everybody out, and Bradley Chubb actually suffered a torn ACL in that game. And then Minshew ended up hitting Raquel Armstead in the corner. That's when everything kind of took off, and the mustaches, the headbands, the jorts. Everybody here. It was definitely Minshew Mania for sure. So yeah, you'll definitely see a bunch of jerseys and shirts, and maybe a few mustaches and bandanas too on Sunday.
So it'll be a nice warm welcome for Gardner back home. How about Ridley Mania there, Marcel? It seemed in the first half in the first week against the Colts, 7 catches, 92 yards, a touchdown. It was well on its way. And then you look at weeks 2, 3, and 4, he didn't have a game where he had more than 3 catches or 40 yards. He really kind of struggled before bouncing back, 7 catches for 122 yards against the Bills last week in London. It's kind of a two-parter here, but what kind of led to that little funk in the middle so far this season, if you want to call it, in weeks 2, 3, and 4? And do you expect after that big game against the Bills, kind of that to carry over this week against the Colts?
I mean, if you're talking in terms of obviously the Jaguars fandom and everything, you hope that what you saw in London sort of carry over for the rest of the season. But in terms of the lull, if we want to call it that for him, I think it's just just kind of getting back in the swing of things. The guy's not, I wouldn't necessarily call it rust. He definitely doesn't like calling it rust. But to be quite honest, the guy missed a lot of football. And as talented as he is, as skilled as he is, I mean, he's still probably the best route runner we've ever had here in Jacksonville. still an elite receiver, but missing all those actual game reps, it still does take some time to kind of get into the swing of things. And I think that's sort of what we saw. Obviously you're gonna, the guys on the other side of the field, they get paid too. They hear about Calvin Ridley coming in, and as a defense, the defensive back room, I always say, is the most prideful room in an NFL locker room, because the league is literally designed for them to get beat. So they take that stuff personal. They wanted to come out there, and obviously, this isn't going to be the game that really gets off. This isn't going to be the game that really shows off in front of everybody. But I think he'll be fine. Truthfully, he's in good spirits. I think a lot of that too is from him being just the ultimate competitor. You wanting to go out there and show as much. And I wouldn't necessarily call it pressing, but there's a lot of plays that he made when he was in Atlanta that he's going to make, but it just may not be, he might not be at that spot yet to be able to make those plays, because there's still a whole lot, in terms of transitioning for him. It's still a new team. Sure, him and Trevor, get the report set up and everything like that, and getting used to running this new offense or running with the other guys. And I think it's just an adjustment thing. And obviously, like I said, the defense is the guys on the other side of the field, they get paid too. But I think even where we're at in the season now, they're still figuring stuff out, which, to be honest, is still kind of scary.
Along those lines, on figuring things out, your offensive line now, getting back healthy, getting everybody back, getting the starting five together. How big is that, and how big of a difference did it make against the Bills?
Huge difference for sure. That offensive line, that has been definitely it's been like a musical chairs, basically. And they're still dealing with it. Obviously Cam Robinson missing the first 4 games. He comes back. We finally get to see, this offensive line that we were thinking it was going to, hold it down, that we've been talking about in training camp. And then Walker Little goes down. So we didn't really get to see that, Cam Robinson and Walker Little combination for a full football game. And obviously it sounds like he's going to be down for a couple of weeks with a knee issue. So it's still kind of shuffling around a little bit, trying to figure out the pieces and everything. But, the offensive line played pretty well, for the most part. I mean, Trevor took about 5 sacks last week. A lot of that, of course, Cam Robinson, another guy coming off injury, missed a lot of football, probably still acclimating, getting reacclimated to the game. So, I remember when we talked, weeks ago in week 1, obviously I said that this Jaguars offense, I didn't think that there was a single team in the league that could line up against them and stop them from doing what they want to do, which I still think is the case. But obviously, the game starts in the trenches, and if Trevor doesn't have protection, or he's running for his life, or he doesn't have time, how many weapons you have doesn't really matter. We've seen when Trevor has time and the way they've kind of schemed things up for him to be able to be comfortable back there making throws and making plays. And even the run game took some time for them to get that going against the Bills. So it's definitely one of those things where they're still really kind of trying to figure it out. You play with the pieces that you have, you play the cards that you've been dealt. But, I think at some point when that stability kicks in on that offensive line, then obviously good things are to come.
Obviously, week 1, we saw that Jaguars offense look, again, pretty good, kind of up to your expectations, scored 31 points. And then you see week 2 against the Chiefs, didn't score an offensive touchdown. Week 3 against the Texans, get blown out at an offense, only put up 17 points. Was there anything you saw from the Chiefs and Texans in weeks 2 and 3 that kind of really befuddled this offense that the Colts could kind of use going into this matchup to try to prevent what happened back in week number 1 again, which was, again, 31 points and a win for Jacksonville?
I mean, and truthfully, as cliche as it sounds, when you ask an offense that's, the perception is that they're high powered, right? Whenever they don't perform, they say, well, we beat ourselves. We're not performing to the best of our abilities. Like, we need to do better as an offense. But to be honest, I think a lot of it was actually that. I think the Chiefs game, I don't think the game was too big for them, but I definitely think that going into that Chiefs game, they were approached that game like they had something to prove. Like this is the elite of the elite, and we feel like we belong there. So I think there may have been a little bit of that during the Chiefs game. The Texans game, I think they went out there and just thought that they were just going to go out there and roll over the Texans. Truthfully, I'm not going to say they were looking past them per se, because in the NFL, every team, any given Sunday, right? But I think a lot of it was just execution. I saw both those games, and there were times when guys weren't catching passes, guys were running wrong routes, the self-infliction of the penalties and everything. I think a lot of it is, maybe not necessarily hearing the noise, but definitely understanding and feeling like, hey, we are a great team. But at the end of the day, you are what your record shows, you are what that stat sheet says. If you go out there and you lose the game, the team that won was the better team. And I think a lot of that was really kind of, them beating themselves, like I said. And I feel like against the Falcons and the Bills, it really just kind of came out. I remember before they went to London, I talked to Christian Kirk in the locker room, and he said, like, we just got to go out there and stop, trying to make the plays and let the plays come to us and make those plays. Don't try to force something to happen. Don't try to do anything outside of your norms or outside of the scheme or outside of what you're being asked to do. Just go out there, be great players because they're great players, and just let it come to them. And I think that's what they did in London, and what I assume that they hope is going to be the case for the weeks to come.
We talked earlier about how important the trenches are. This is the last one for me. Obviously, the concerns in the Colts secondary, young corners and young safeties. But from an outside perspective, how good has that defensive front been for the Colts, and how concerned are the Jaguars with that front seven?
I think the current concern is probably about where it usually is. I mean, it's still a pretty good front seven. I think honestly, when the Colts, I wouldn't necessarily say go as far as saying that they're underrated, because they are pretty, well known for being, pretty stout up front. And I don't think that the Jags are looking past that. I think there is definitely some concern, especially with the shuffling of this offensive line. And having to move guys around, guys not being healthy, guys banged up, so early in the season. It's definitely a big concern. Because obviously we've seen the guys on that defensive line of the Colts, they're playmakers. They cause disruption. And anything you can do to cause disruption, throw off the timing or anything like that, it's a problem. And this is a team, this Jaguars team, that has shown that whenever they're going up against a defensive line or a defensive unit that is known for getting pressure on the quarterback, they've struggled a little bit.
Finally, Marcel, we got to wrap up with this. It's been a long time since the Colts have gone down to Jacksonville and won. 8 straight losses, to be exact. Right now, this game, Vegas has the Jaguars at home. Not a shock. Favored by 4 points. So, for the streak to end, for the Colts to finally win in Jacksonville, the Colts win on Sunday if?
For me to say that the Colts win on Sunday, I would have to think that they released JT, and he just there's a resurgence, right? He comes out and runs angry and finds a way to run over this defense. I think that for the Colts to win this game, they're going to have to score points. I think obviously having Gardner Minshew in as opposed to Anthony Richardson, I think Gardner Minshew is a fine quarterback. I understand that I want to say that every game that he's played in that the Colts have won this year, but it's so very different when you're the guy, right? When you're the backup coming in, it's a different boost. It's a different feel for the team. But coming in knowing that he's a guy, I think the Jags have enough time to have a pretty good plan to keep him sort of at bay. This Jaguars defense has been playing pretty good for the past few weeks, obviously. And you saw what they've been doing. They did Josh Allen last week, slowing them down, and even the Falcons game playing pretty well there. So I think for the Colts to win this game, they're going to have to find a way to score points. And I think the best chance for them to score points is, that running game between Zach Moss and JT. If they can find a way to go off against frankly, a run defense that's been pretty good, I think that's probably the only way the Colts win this game, which is definitely a tall ask.
Say the least. To say the least, for sure. Does a great job covering the Jaguars for Action Sports Jax. Marcel, always a pleasure. And do join us here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod. Thank you as always, and enjoy the game on Sunday, man.
Absolutely. Wish you guys were down here to see some of this. We finally got some cool weather, so it's not 1,000 degrees.
What's cool?
That's nice.
Cool for us here in Jacksonville is anything between 60 and 70 is comfortable for us.
Okay.
Cool
So
us.
no debilitating heat on Sunday. There we go. Maybe a reason for optimism.
Yeah, I don't think that we're going to be carrying people out on this Sunday.
Just the Colts. All right, George, you heard Marcel really kind of highlight what we started the pod with, run game. He said the only way he sees the Colts win this game is by establishing the run and really having Jonathan Taylor go off here again. It just drives home the point that if you are the Colts, the best and maybe only chance you have of winning this game is by establishing the ground and pound early and really, again, asserting your will, which is, like we talked about before, one of the biggest struggles they've had specifically for whatever reason, in Jacksonville.
And along with that, protect the football, right? I mean, you had the lost fumbles last time around, the interception by Anthony Richardson late. You can't, against a team like Jacksonville, where you're going to be the underdog, you can't give them the ball. And the Colts have done a really good job with that the last 4 weeks here in between, their last meeting with Jacksonville. So this cannot be the game that goes off the tracks either. But I think it all starts up front. This offensive line, traditionally, no matter how well they've been playing, has struggled against Jacksonville, and I think that's got to change. They've got to go down there. They go have a similar performance to what they had on Sunday against the Titans.
Let me ask you this, because Marcel specified Jonathan Taylor. Now, obviously, right, like that's obviously the big name everyone's going to focus on. We saw last week he got 7 touches, right, 6 carries and a reception. Shane Steichen said this week he's still working to ramp Jonathan Taylor up. What would you expect going to this game his workload to be? Would you expect it to double? Like, basically it's right up 15 touches. Is that fair to assume from JT this week?
That's a good question. I think because how quickly does the ramp up go and where's he at? I will say that, talking with him in the locker room today, he seems in even better spirits than he was. I think last week went well for him in terms of how his body feels and, getting back into the swing of things. And he definitely seemed like a guy who felt like he's ready for a bigger load, but what that is a good question. I'm going to say less than 20. I think he's still going to be in that stretch. Now, the question is with JT, he's one of those guys that it only takes one. That 56-yard run that Zach Moss had on Sunday set the tone. If you get one of those from JT, and Moss can be his normal, hammer self and just go out there and wear down that Jacksonville defense, that to me is the path to victory right there. And then off of that, some things open up and Gardner makes a few plays here and there to keep the chains moving, maybe gets a big pass play in there just to keep the defense honest. That is the formula for victory.
I feel like the Colts this week specifically have to almost model themselves after Derrick Henry, meaning this. You call Zach Moss the hammer. I feel like if you're Shane Steichen especially, you want to try to game plan a lot of early runs for Zach Moss in the game. Try in the first half, maybe not even gain a ton of yards, but try to wear them down. And then, like you said, with JT, if you're able in the second half, like, let's just say the number's 15, right? Let's argument say 15 touches is the plan for JT this week in Jacksonville. I would honestly say if I'm Shane Steichen, like, I'm going to try to game plan for 10 touches in the second half. Sprinkle in the first half, but like really try to ride Zach Moss in the hopes of wearing that front down. And then when you get into the second half and hopefully the fourth quarter, where we saw Jacksonville, score 2 touchdowns in week number 1, the Colts didn't score anything. You hope that that's when you can really try to spring Jonathan Taylor on either a screen pass or a run up the middle. And like I said, really capitalize on home run hitting ability. Even if he's not going to be, your workhorse like he used to be, really kind of still be able to kind of, exploit that in a positive way in limited touches.
Yeah, when you first said Derrick Henry, I thought you meant they're going to throw a touchdown pass with the halfback because
that's it. Why not?
2 weeks in a row there. I mean, he threw one against the Bengals, and they just couldn't keep it in bounds there against Indy last week. So
nice pass.
JT making a lot of money. Let him throw the ball a little bit too, right? I mean, why not?
I was gonna say when he was at training camp, was he throwing the ball at all? I know he couldn't really run. Was he getting his arm loose? Is Zach Moss's form fully back where he can grip a football and throw a tight spiral?
The only thing JT was throwing at training camp was shade. But since then, it's been all good now. It's all happy days, all good. Sunshine ahead.
How about this? Here's one. Hopefully Shane Steichen listens, because this is a free play, guaranteed to work. You're going to Jacksonville, right? What better way to honor a Jacksonville legend than Tim Tebow, where they play the Georgia-Florida game in that stadium, than the jump pass? Maybe Gardner Minshew, shotgun. Oh, here comes the quarterback draw. What are we doing? Oh, my God, he's jumping up, and there's Drew Ogletree, Molly Cox in the back of the end zone wide open. Maybe he hands it to Zach Moss, and Zach Moss can do a little shovel pass, jump pass. I think we should incorporate, George, this week, the shovel jump pass here by the goal line and really bust it out.
Shovel jump pass to Grover Stewart. There you go, right there. Get Grover in there as a fullback, sneak him out. He's in there to block for the run and then do the jump pass. Grover gets the touchdown. May have to cancel the rest of the season after that, though. I mean, that might be peak Indianapolis Colts football.
That is tremendous. I didn't even think about that. You can even line about on the end of the line, like an extra tight end, tackle eligible. Number 90 is eligible. Get on, hear the referee on the loudspeaker. Wow, that would be electric. Now, Quentin Nelson, it didn't count, but at the time he thought he scored a touchdown and celebrated by doing a cake stand.
Yep.
I hope Grover got something ready. It
Oh,
can't just be like a spike.
There's no doubt Grover has something ready. He's been talked to him the week after Buck scored against Jacksonville the last time, and he knows he needs some big play. He actually wants an interception, which I think might be, in my mind, that might be the greatest highlight in Indianapolis Colts history. Grove gets an interception.
Move over the Marlon Jackson interception to Tom Brady in 06. Peyton Manning lifting the Super Bowl trophy. The greatest moment. Grover Stewart INT. Here's one. You ready? Let's channel our inner Joe Horn here, George. Get some wings, right? His famous sink wings, and put them under the goalpost, right under the pylon, in each end zone, because you gotta make sure that you're covered either way. And then he either picks the ball off or hopefully preferably scores a touchdown, runs over, lifts it up. Joe Horn picked up the cell phone, made a call. There's Grover Stewart eating some wings. There it is, George. There is the highlight play, followed by the highlight celebration. Forget the Colts season. Cancel the rest of the NFL season. It's over.
That is peak NFL. There's no question about it. You cannot get better than that. No, I do think, in all honesty, not so much Grover Stewart, but we talked about this just a couple of minutes ago. Turnovers, another critical part of this game. The Colts have to protect the ball, as I said, earlier, but they've got to find a way to turn over the Jacksonville offense. I think you've got to limit their possessions. The three things you got to do defensively: limit their possessions, which is really more of an offensive play. And so, I'm a genius there. But then you've got to be stiff in the red zone. Field goals instead of touchdowns here. I think that's critical. Do not let them finish off drives. You may give a big play here and there, but do not let them finish off drives and then get a turnover or two. I think that's, in addition to the run game, which is, as we talked about, critical. Marcel agrees with us on that. I think the next best thing that can happen is win in the red zone, make them kick field goals and not score touchdowns, and force a turnover or two.
Turnovers, I think, are going to be huge here because, obviously, the Colts are the underdog for a reason, right? No Anthony Richardson, and the Jaguars are a talented team. So it's obvious, right? It's always, you feel like always, anytime an underdog trying to pull off the upset, what is the one key everyone talks about? Oh, turnovers, get it, win the turnover battle. But in this case, it's not only true, but it's also attainable because Gardner Minshew is someone who is very safe with the football. He does not take a lot of chances whatsoever. That upsets a lot of fans because he also bypasses some deep shots and explosive plays, but he definitely takes care of the football. And as you saw in week 1, right, Trevor Lawrence had 2 turnovers, including the one that led to DeForest Buckner's touchdown. We saw last week in London, 3 fumbles, 2 lost by Trevor Lawrence, including some that were deep in Buffalo's end. So Trevor Lawrence, the last 3 games, has fumbled total, not lost, but just fumbled, put the ball on the ground 6 times. This is a guy who's had trouble of late holding onto the ball, especially in the pocket. You look at the front 4 for the Colts, right? They are very good at generating pressure here. If you can get to Trevor, he's had some fumbling issues. And whether it's deep in Jacksonville's own end, and you give the Colts a short field, or whether it's kind of like you're talking about in the red zone here, getting a turnover and preventing Jacksonville from putting points on the board here, George. Colts, it's obvious, but it's also key here. If they're going to win this game on Sunday, without a doubt, you can't be even, you can't lose by 1. They have to win the turnover margin.
Yeah, I'll give you, you asked Marcel, the Colts win if they rush for 130 yards and the defense scores a touchdown.
All right. You're not wrong. It's a tough bar, but you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Really tough bar.
What's more likely? Defensive touchdown on Sunday or the Colts rushing for 130 yards, which again, they've had their troubles running on the Jaguars.
They should be able to run, though, I feel like on Sunday, just because I know Jacksonville's got a really good defense and they've done a good job historically against this team, but you would think with this offensive line and Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor, they should be able to move the ball on the ground.
I'm with you. I think defensive touchdown's a little bit harder this week just because it's a little bit of luck, right? Of where the ball is thrown, where you get the turnover, hopefully. But you're right. The Colts, again, should be able, with the way this offensive line is blocked well against Tennessee, blocked well against the Ravens as well, at least in terms of on the ground. They've had some tough competition, and they've held their own, especially, again, have gotten better as the season goes. I'm with you in the sense that they should be able to run the ball effectively on Sunday. Again, it hopefully equals a win, but it's one of those where even if they lose, we still should be talking after the game, George, about them at least running the ball and establishing the run. And that should not be a reason why that they do lose the game on Sunday. One quick note, George, before we get to our game picks, and we are back on the winning streak. No big deal. Watch out. Don't let us get hot. We did talk. So we're doing these back-to-back pods here this week, a little wonky schedule. I have a Friday wedding in Newport, Rhode Island, traveling. So George is kind enough, and so is Marcel, to adjust their schedule from our normal Thursday taping to now here on Wednesday. So back-to-back pods, George. Tuesday, we talked about, before the news was official, Anthony Richardson's future. We both assumed it's going to be on the longer end than the shorter end. And today, Wednesday, that is, he was officially placed on IR. And Adam Schefter, amongst other reporters, is reporting that the timeline for a Richardson return is anywhere between 4 and 8 weeks. Can I just ask you this in general? How can you honestly give a timeline that is so vast? He could return in a month. It also could be double the time. Like, it's a little bit what we talked about. So I don't mean to answer my own question. So it's a little bit what we talked about on Tuesday about, like, everyone is different. And, like, so recovery times could be faster or shorter. I get it. But it just, I get a laugh every time when you see such a huge, massive net cast of a timeline of just like, well, I'm not going to be wrong here. So it's going to be out in a month because he's on IR. It could be out 2 months. We'll just see what happens. It's such a huge gap where he could be out for a month, or it could be double that.
Down for 1 to 17 weeks.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with the nature of that injury too. I mean, shoulder, there's just so many moving pieces there, and there's so many, if this ligament, if this happened, is his clavicle intact? There's just so many little things in there that they all add up. And I think that's where it comes down to. And then on top of that, what you just said, different people healing at different times. So, if it's on the better end of everything and the rehabilitation goes as planned, which, as we know, every rehab in the history of this football team has gone perfectly. As long as that happens, then, you'd hit that 4-week time span. But if you hit some hurdles and there's some bumps in the road, maybe it's closer to 8. I think Shane in particular, I know there was some consternation today, and rightfully so. I mean, look, anytime we're talking in Indianapolis about the quarterback injuring his throwing shoulder, it is going to be a massive panic. It just is. I think from now until the end of time, there's PTSD here that's not going away. I understand that. Anybody, any city is not going to be happy that their quarterback has an injured throwing shoulder. But here especially, that's going to raise a lot of red flags. And then Shane Steichen comes out during his presser and doesn't rule out the idea that maybe he doesn't come back at all this year. Asked a couple times and really just we'll see. We're still evaluating. We'll talk to the doctors, and I understand why that sets off alarm bells. And I do think it's a non-zero outcome. There's a chance that this happens. I don't think it's the most likely outcome, but it's not something you can rule out. That's why they're not doing it. But I think even going back to that answer is, I don't think anybody wants to set an unreasonable timetable here. If you say it's 4 weeks and cut and dried, and you get to week 5 and he's not out there, now we're going to have 10 times the red flags that we already have. So I think that's what you're seeing even from the doctors is, look, it's 4 to 8 because it could be 8, and it could be the rest of the year. So, we'll see how that works out. I think a lot of that has to do with how they're doing on the field too. I mean, let's be honest. If they take a nosedive and it's the longer into this, at some point you got to sit down and determine whether it's in his best interest to come in. And that ultimately is the bottom line, whether it's 4 weeks, whether it's 8 weeks, whether it's 12 weeks. We said this on Tuesday, and I think it's going to remain true. Get him healthy, whatever that takes. If it's 3 months, it's 3 months. Get him healthy.
100% with you. To get, I guess, some specifications and some reasoning. So if he's out for the rest of the year, is that because he would need surgery, you think? Is that is surgery, I guess, still possibly on the table?
That's part of why it's 4 to 8 too, because they still don't know. They still haven't ruled out surgery. And I think if he has to undergo surgery, then that 8-week comes back into it. And then if the surgery doesn't go well, or if, there's bad recovery from that, again, that's never happened around here. Then that could stretch again, beyond that 8 weeks. So I think that's why they're not ruling anything out right now. But if everything goes well and he doesn't need surgery and he heals the way he is, then it could be a 4-week, situation. So we'll see. But I think the most important thing is that he has the time to get better. And as we said before, defense playing relatively well. Gardner Minshew's played relatively well. You got 2 running backs you have a lot of faith in. Don't rush him back. Lean on these other guys. What did Chris Ballard say day one when he took the job? It's not about one guy. And I think they've got to live that right now for however long it takes to get Anthony Richardson back on the field.
Is there any sort of timeline of when like surgery either could be ruled out or happen? Like I know they're still doing tests and looking. Is there any sort of timeline of when they can at least figure out like if surgery is an option or not?
I would assume it's got to be a week or 2. I mean, no one's saying anything there, but I would guess right now there's probably still some inflammation in there. That's usually the issue. They're waiting for that to calm down so they can really get a good look at everything, and then they'll make a decision. And there's probably some things that he's got to. It's like any other time. You go to the doctor and you do the MRI or whatever it is that's going on in your life, and they say, hey, if by Wednesday you're still having pain, come back in because this needs to happen. That's the stage that he's at right now.
So a wait and see, a long timeline. He's on IR, so we know guaranteed he'll miss the next 4 games. Probably, again, even though he's scheduled to come off, the first game he potentially could return is the Patriots in Germany, followed by the bye. It almost feels like almost a guarantee that, the earliest he'll be back is the week 12 against the Buccaneers after the bye. Just makes so much sense to just keep him on the shelf for an extra 2 weeks and get him truly back to health if he's ready by that point to come off IR. Like I said, the 8-week timeline, the end of the year timeline, still, unfortunately, still could be a possibility. Like you said, Colts, quarterbacks, injuries. When those 3 words are in the same sentence, usually then the 4th word, timeline, is never really accurate or can be relied upon.
Could be heading over to, where was it? Denmark now to get
the Netherlands, right?
Treatment and so yeah, who knows? Who knows what the future holds here?
Let me tell you, I think Elon Musk, banned flight tracking from Twitter. Bring it back, because if there's a private jet leaving from Indianapolis going to the Netherlands, George,
we need to know about it.
Oh, we need to know. And we need to forget a 5-alarm fire, a 6-alarm fire. If that is going to be the case, that is, oh boy, that is panic city. My goodness. Also, really, really fast here. What is Chris Ballard doing? Signing Kellen Mond? George, is this guy serious?
Hey,
did he not watch a tape I sent him? I sent him the tape 2016.
All you gotta do is rewind to the Tuesday pod. I told you, Senior Bowl, man. Senior Bowl. That's all.
You're right. Damn it. I hate that you're right. You're 100% right. You called it.
Here's the worst thing, though. They gave him number 12. I don't know if that's out there yet, but he's wearing number 12.
No, he's not.
He's wearing number 12.
He can't be the first. I should know something.
First
he's
QB.
not the first,
there was a
right?
receiver. DeMichael Harris wore it as a
Thank
receiver,
you.
but he's the first quarterback to wear number 12 since Andrew. We need Andrew Luck to weigh in on this. Captain Andrew Luck to weigh in on this. We can find out how he feels. There's no squirrel oil for Kellen Mond. I know that. Not going to be on the next gift basket.
No goose fat in his stocking?
Nope, not now. Not wearing number 12.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like that. You know what? Yeah, I don't like that. If you want to give it to another position, okay, fine. Again, you only have so many numbers to use. I get it. I don't know if I like. It feels a little personally too soon to be giving out 12 to a quarterback.
At least he is on the practice squad, but it will be very weird if there's a number 12 out on the field at quarterback for the Colts. That will definitely feel different.
Yeah, to say the least. To say the least. That is for sure. Holy cow. Wow. Yeah, bringing back some good memories. That's for wow. We're talking shoulders, we're talking quarterbacks and number 12 jerseys here. We are blasting right now to the past. All right, George, if we fast forward to the future, or I guess the present right now, so we're in. We are right now on a 1-game winning streak. And I hate that, by the way. I hate people say, oh, a winning streak is not 1 game. Screw you. A winning streak is a game. All right, we're on a winning streak. We got the prediction of the Tennessee Titans right. And just like the Colts now, our record is mirrored at 3-2 so far through the first 5 weeks of the season. As you look ahead or look now to Sunday, George, right? We know 8 straight since they've won in Jacksonville. The bookies right now in Vegas have the Jaguars favored by 4 points at home. G-Money, is the streak extending to 9, or for the second week in a row, is the streak breaking?
And the Colts broke 3 streaks on Sunday. That's still kind of crazy. First home win against the Titans since what, 2018.
Right.
First home win period in almost a calendar year, and first win against the Titans period in 5 games. So I think that's too many streaks. I think you can't ask a team to break 4 streaks in 2 weeks. That's probably unprecedented in NFL history. So I am gonna, at least my stats say it's unprecedented in NFL history. So I'm gonna say. Basically comes down to this. Until they win in Jacksonville, I'm not picking them to win in Jacksonville. I just can't do it. I'll pick the Jaguars 28-21.
Wow, Colts get in the end zone 3 times.
Wow.
Wow, okay. All right, 28-21. Okay. I'm in a little bit of a pickle here, George. So the ice has not melted as fast as I thought. I guess you can see right there.
That's a bad sign too.
Yeah, you're right. I was hoping that was going to be. That's not great. We have about probably cumulatively 3 cubes. 3 cubes still remaining. So 5 losses out of the 8 have been melted away. 3 are still standing. So maybe that means in 3 years from now, that's when the Colts will win their next hug. So we're on the Blue Horseshoe Pod, and that'll be 2026. Guarantee a win in Jacksonville. But until then, we're still going to do it, and we're still going to hopefully have this work here. All right, George. Bottoms up to the streak ending. Colts 20. Jaguars 13. The streak is over, George. The streak is over. Damn the ice. I hate how, again, it would have been better if it was all melted. So I feel like I hope I didn't ruin the point there. But overall, we broke the streak last week. We did something right. We did something right. If you want to say we willed it into reality, fine. We did it. So damn it, George, I'm going to go back to the well and try to will this into reality 2 weeks in a row. 20-13.
How many victory cones if they break the streak in Jacksonville?
Holy cow. I mean, 8 probably.
Right? Because you got to have one for each missing year there.
And then 1 for Sunday, maybe 9.
Maybe 9.
Boy, Ralph's Italian Ices, who does do cones, by the way, not just Italian Ices. They also do soft serve ice cream. They'll be busy. I'm telling you, they're going to be the biggest Colts fans on Sunday. That's for sure. Business will be booming.
If nothing else, we have made a whole new corner of New York Colts fans this year with the podcast.
That's true. We are supporting local business.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, they are now the city, the portion of the city is now painted Colts blue.
And you're going to need them because it sounds like if the Colts do win on Sunday, as Marcel told us off the air, you're banned from the stadium. So, you may need all the businesses behind you that you can get.
That's true. One less city I can now, count on living in Jacksonville. So got to make nice with the people around me. So at least I'm accepted more and don't get banned from other places. That could be a quickly growing list. Could be huge.
You make that sacrifice though for the win to never be allowed to go to Jacksonville. Is that fair? Fair trade?
That's fair. If that means I can never go to a Penn State Gator Bowl or a Colts Jaguars game, even if it's into January and it's freezing here in the Northeast and the pool in the end zone looks very enticing and very warm and very welcoming, I will take one for the team. I'll say, I can't, I'll pass. I'm going to honor the ban and make sure that this team does win.
That's huge. That's sacrifice.
Whatever it takes.
That's the kind of things it takes to end streaks like this, though. Sacrifice. Everybody's got to be all in. Now we know that this is where it stands.
That is right, George. I'm leaving it all on the line. The players leave it on the line on Sunday. I'm leaving it all on the line here as we get set for this game. Okay, as a reminder, we are live on YouTube after the game. So if it's a Colts win, it will be a joyous Week 6 post-game pod. If it's a Colts loss, well, we've done a few of these before already, especially after Jaguars game, so nothing new there. Either way, subscribe on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Pod. Also, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, Blue Horseshoe Podcast as well. George, enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk to you Sunday after the game, where else, but right here on YouTube, as a reminder, on YouTube, on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.